Okay, we're back. So I'm gonna, it is working. Okay. All right. So what we're going to talk about, or what I'm going to talk about and have you do, because this is an important piece of the study or the presentation that you're going to do at the end of the quarter on the organization that you're studying. And so all organizations, all situations where people gather together and agree to work on a topic together, or maybe that's one of the problems is that they haven't agreed on what the topic is. But every task group, every group that is having to focus on an issue has multiple perspectives going into it. And the practicality of working in a group is difficult sometimes. If you get a really good group where people get along and they think similarly, et cetera, well, then you're really lucky. But for the most part, groups have to have a methodology, and they have to have some way of crashing out, spreading out, getting rid of the noise, and getting to the situation at hand. And so in this situation, what we're working on is we're going to decide, okay, what is an issue or what is a question that your organization has that keeps the leader, keeps the CEO, keeps the office manager, keeps the executive director, keeps them up at night. The thing that lingers in their thinking as they wonder how they're going to move forward with their organization and meeting the needs, meeting the mission of the organization. So we call that nagging question, and usually we get it not very well articulated. So part of our job has been to help them to articulate the big pieces or the pieces that make up that issue. And so a good leader thinks this way. And so a good leader will think, as we ask him, what is your central question? All right, so that's really important. What's the central question? Now, when we ask what's the central question, we might hear, well, the issue I'm most concerned about is X. That's your central question. You might reframe it as a question, but that's the core issue that you're going to be defining for yourself relative to the organization, and maybe even for the organization itself. And so at its core, what it means, okay, and I've got slides that I'll show you. Let me see if I can twist this around. Okay, I guess I'm going to have to show it to you like this, and I'm not sure how that's going to work. All right, so central question is how, excuse me, this is definitely low tech in my office with not too many things that are working for me today. Okay, so a central question is a core main issue that if you can solve, or if you can make progress on, then your organization is going to thrive, it's going to do better. It's going to actually come to a good place, a better place than before it was resolved. So, but to find a good central question in your role as a leader, and as in your role, you're actually trying to help the organization define what their central question might be. What do they spend? What is the leader, or what do I, if I'm the leader, what do I spend most of my time thinking and wondering about? What's my mind, or what is their mind on when they're not occupied with other things like family and lunch and cycling to work? That's maybe when they're really thinking about it. And it boils down to what worries you the most. Okay, so you should spend quite a bit of time considering what might be the central questions And if you don't feel like you've got contact or have a way to go back and have this conversation with the person that you talk to, I would say have a conversation with yourself, or have a conversation with your partner that you're going to be doing the presentations with. Okay, so that's what we're aiming for, is the central question. There are 4 steps at looking at the central question. Really super easy to consider. Okay, so the 4 steps of looking at a central question, first of all, we need to define it. And that takes, it certainly takes a lot of writing and rewriting and writing and rewriting to get it right, because we're looking for clarity. First of all, how clear can we state what the central question is? When we say alignment, this is when we have other people that have to agree with us that this is the central question. And so defining includes self and other. So it's actually the best way to approach this task is to have everybody who might be working toward a resolution, have them work by themselves for a while in terms of defining what they think the central question is, and having them make it as clear as possible, and then bring together and work toward alignment. That's a very, very difficult process. Hopefully we'll have some time to talk about it in addition to just creating this document. All right, the second process in looking at the central question is structuring. Now, we're really going to focus on the process of focus and structure on this aspect of the course. Any leader has to be able to do this, that they have to be able to know what the issue or issues are, and they have to have a way of structuring the issues and the components of the issues so that everything gets addressed, and the most important things that will make the most difference get addressed first. The way that we do that is we create a tree, and it's called an issue tree. And it's actually just like you used to diagram sentences, where you have a one point and then it branches off into things, different levels. And so we'll have you do that with this. So the structuring is you're going to create 2 documents for me, 1-page documents, easy, piece of cake. One will be the central question breakdown, and the other will be what we call an issue tree. You'll see that in a few minutes. All right, the third step in looking at a central question is prioritizing. It's a way, how does your group, or how do you as a leader decide what is and is not necessary to do? What do you need to know to be able to decide what is necessary and what is not necessary? A bit tricky, but it's part of being a leader. And then finally, after you've decided what is and is not necessary to do, then there's that whole planning phase where it actually takes the structure and the process that you've just done, and then it becomes very, very easy to develop an action plan. Now, if I were talking with you about this in the classroom, in our class, or if I'm talking to you live, we're talking to you live, this is a piece of cake. It's wonderful. But if we were talking live, we would go through each of these, and you could ask me questions about it. All right. So I like this next little piece, and this graphically illustrates why no, you don't get to see it. I'm sitting here looking at it, and you don't get to see it. But this graphically describes why it's important to have multiple perspectives. Okay, so here we have, let me see if I can get it in there so it shows pretty well. Yeah, I'm so dyslexic with space. All right, so here's a central question. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to get these three doctors to agree on the best way to improve the health of the elephant. So the elephant is feeling a little sick, doesn't look so good, doesn't feel so good, lost his appetite, isn't flomping around and swinging his trunk so much. So everybody knows he's got something wrong with him. So the doctor on the top right is going, I see. This elephant, I do believe, has something wrong with his eyes. They just look, they look like something's wrong. I'm this super wonderful elephant optometrist, and I can see that if we do something with that poor elephant's eyes, he's going to feel a whole lot better. So that's his position. The guy down at the bottom, he is an elephant foot doctor, and he's looking at the elephant's feet, and he's going, golly, there's something wrong with these feet. This guy, no wonder this guy won't walk around and won't do much, because he's got bad feet. So what we need to do is we need to do something about fixing his bad feet. Okay, so we've got two opinions or two perspectives. Then we go over to the guy on the left-hand side, and he looks at the elephant, and he says, there's something wrong with this elephant's butt. This butt does not look right. There's just something going on inside this butt, and we need to fix it. And once we fix that, this elephant is going to be back good as new. Okay, so this is the problem. Anytime you're approaching a question and you have multiple people addressing it, you're going to have all of these different perspectives. So how do you get alignment on these? You have an eye guy, you have a foot guy, and you have a butt guy. So it's a lot of skillful communication, asking a lot of questions, really listening. And if we had time in this class, we would take a situation like that, and we would have some of you demonstrate how to get to alignment, and I'd coach you along the way. So when I come back on November 11th, we might do that. I'm going to sneeze. No, excuse me. I have been fighting a cold, so sorry for that. All right, so I just got that idea just now, that would be a really good thing to do as we're working on this process, to have a practice in gaining alignment. We do, in the workshops that I do, we spend 3 full days working and working and working on this whole process of alignment. Because what you have to do when you are working toward alignment is you have to hear everybody's perspective. If you don't hear everybody's perspective and acknowledge everybody's perspective, then they're going to come up and they're going to torpedo whatever conclusion or whatever conclusion or agreement you've come up to, because theirs isn't in it. So they can say, well, you never considered this, so that what you just came up with is incomplete, or it's bunk, or it's blah. Okay, so everybody has to be heard. It takes a long time sometimes. It's a time-consuming process. So everybody has to be heard. And then the group needs to decide, okay, how are we going to assess the facts associated with what we've heard? Because we have to move toward finding out why this elephant is sick. So what are the facts? So first of all, in this case, we'd have to think about, the facts would be, well, okay, so tell us about the eye disease in elephants. What kind of eye disease are you thinking? What kind of symptoms do elephants have if they have eye disease? And what kind of tests can we do to determine if that's really what the elephant has? Do the same thing with the feet. You know, what kind of diseases do elephants have? What kind of symptoms does this guy have? You know, what kind of, do the symptoms that this guy has match other cases of elephant bad foot? And then, what kind of tests can we do so we know whether this is an eye situation or a foot situation? And then the butt doctor comes bopping along and he says, well, wait a minute, you know, you need to consider this. All right, there are many, many, many diseases of elephant butts. You know, it's the end of the food processing process, and anything that interferes, any kind of, you know, germs or bugs or, you know, any number of things that are in part of the digestion of food can make it all the way to the end, which is the elephant's butt, and it can cause a disease process of the butt. And so, so the others say, well, okay, so what kind of diseases? What are the symptoms? What is the, you know, does this elephant have enough butt disease symptoms that we need to consider it? And what are the tests that we can do? So what they've come to alignment on, I mean, it doesn't sound a lot like, but they've come to alignment on, we need to assess symptoms and we need to do tests to help us determine which of these three perspectives is most likely to be true. But the alignment isn't necessarily on the answer at this point. The alignment is on how do we proceed to come to a conclusion. So a lot of people think that alignment has to be, oh, we have to all agree. No. I mean, eventually we should agree. But what we have to do at the beginning stage is figure out a process about factors or processes that we can all agree on moving forward. Okay? All right. So then since I brought this alignment thing up, then here is a problem statement worksheet that breaks down all of the pieces in terms of coming up with a clear statement about all of the complexities, all of the things that are associated with that particular issue. So I'm going to use, I think some of my examples come from the work that I've done in the Tibetan monasteries. Okay, but we'll see that in a minute. All right, so here is a problem statement worksheet. I don't know if you can read it very well. I think if it gets on a computer, if somebody gets it on a computer, it's going to be fine. Okay, so we've already gone through a discussion of what's the basic question, but I just want to re-emphasize it again because you'll get a squabble and spread out all over the place if this thing isn't right. And so, wait a minute, maybe if I put this on. There we go. Okay. Oops. All right. This is going to be better. All right. So I think, can you see? I know it'll be better this way. So I'm going to do that. All right. So the first thing is, and I've just been talking about it, what's the basic question we're trying to resolve? Okay. So we've gone through all of that work of thinking about it, contemplating, obsessing about it, thinking, is this the thing that if I address, it's going to change the operation or the direction or the mission? I mean, is it going to make a big bang difference in my organization? So that's how serious it can be. Dang, I keep screwing this up. Sorry, guys. All right, the second piece is, all right, so we've decided that this is our basic question, but we need to defend it. We need to defend it in terms of why are we addressing it? Why is this a problem? Why is it important? You know, you may be talking to an organization that is having trouble with recruiting and retaining volunteers. It's a big problem with many nonprofit organizations. And so the basic question they're trying to resolve is how can they, you know, what is what's their process and what's wrong with it, because they can't, maybe they can recruit, but they can't keep people. They can't retain people. And so you got that stated. And then you go, oh, okay, so why is this problem important? Well, I mean, clearly that problem is important because it's the volunteers that actually reach out and do the work of the organization. They're the face of the organization among its clients, you know, among who works with it. And so it is important. So this is the kind of thing you're going to need to be able to articulate. Why is the problem you've chosen important to the organization? All right. Now, here we have a couple of questions. Okay, so who will be affected by the solution? In the case, excuse me, that I just mentioned, okay, who will be affected or influenced? First of all, the volunteers will be affected. The volunteers who've started and who are, for whatever reason, are thinking about leaving. So they will definitely be affected if you come up with a solution. The organization itself will be affected because their retention problem is being addressed and it might get resolved. Clients might be affected by the solution because there might be more continuity of contact within the organization, you know, continuity of care. The other way that the clients can be affected by this solution is there might be faster access to services, because if they've got a high turnover, if an organization has a high turnover of volunteers, that means that there are gaps in time when they can give services to people. Okay, so the second part of this question is who's going to be involved. Now, by this we mean who's going to be involved in the solution. And so you would have to say, okay, who inside the organization and who outside of the organization can we pull in and have them do X, Y, and Z, or do something. And so you might have a benefactor, someone who repeatedly supports you, your organization. You might have a group of another funding group that has supported your organization, and they might be involved in the solution. You might call a consultant in to help you with the solution. You know, and then the leader, the executive director or the CEO would have to decide, okay, this is a problem, this is an issue we're going to address, and he'll form a team, and he'll say, okay, or she'll form a team, and she'll say, okay, these are the people that are going to come up with a solution and be in charge of implementation. So, and you're going to do this worksheet for your study, for your organization, and this should be as complete, well thought out. I mean, don't sit down and just do it in 5 minutes. Really, really think about it. This is a structured approach to addressing a problem. Everybody in every organization that you find you end up at will be so appreciative if you have a structured way of addressing things. And this is one of the structured ways that you can address issues or problems. Okay. What are the criteria for success? It's it's best practice to at this stage of the work is to say, okay, when are we going to know that we're successful? So how do we want to word that? So in the case of the volunteers, volunteer retention, you could say, okay, within 3 months of implementing a plan that we come up with, our retention rate has risen by 10%. That might mean only one additional person didn't leave, but it to be spelled out as specifically as you can. Another on that one might be that the retention rate is slow, that the attrition rate slows over the next year, so that it continues at its current rate until the implementation has been well implemented. And then we notice over time that fewer and fewer volunteers leave our organization. And you probably would want to specify what fewer and fewer means. Okay? All right, now this is the tricky part. What is possible and what is not possible to do given the situation? So people at this point, probably by here or here, they will be thinking, oh my God, this is like really dragging. Let's just get to it. Let's just come up with a plan. And so they'll come up with a plan that's totally unrealistic. Instead of volunteers, why don't we just pay them? Why don't we pay somebody to go out and solicit volunteers? Well, it might be possible in this particular organization to do that. It might be impossible in this organization to do that. So my advice is, when you get to this question, is to write out just wildly what are some possible solutions to the basic question, and then use your analytical thinking, your critical thinking, and say, okay, this solution that I've just proposed, it needs X, Y, and Z. Is the organization that I'm studying, is that organization in a situation where it's possible to do what I've proposed? And do that with every idea about what's possible that you come up with. Be really rigorous with this. Because pie in the sky, brainstorming is a fantastic way to come up with thoughts and ideas that, if we're just thinking superficially, we don't come up with. And so what is possible and what is not possible given the situation is an opportunity to do pie in the sky, come up with all sorts of outrageous ideas. And in that creative process might come 1 or 2 or 3 ideas that are possible and that might be really working toward the criteria for success. Okay? And what obstacles might get in the way? Okay, so we've come along and we've done boom, 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 boom. We've pie in the sky what's possible. We've eliminated those things that are absolutely not possible. And we say, okay, now we've got 4 great ideas. But those are our ideas. We're sitting here generating these ideas, and we don't know the whole story. So we have to now brainstorm, what are the obstacles that might get in the way of what's possible? Usually obstacles, well, I shouldn't say usually, but often obstacles are agency, organization, what I would call it, apathy. Okay, so we have this great idea. We think it's possible because you have X, Y, and Z. Why don't we try it? And they say, oh, we tried that before. That doesn't work. Okay, so the agency, we've tried that before, it doesn't work. Okay, so what do you do with that? They might not have tried it the way that you're thinking about it, so it might not actually be an obstacle that stops the process. So what do? when you have somebody in the agency say, oh, we tried that. I mean, they roll their eyes, and they go, oh, these people from outside, they just don't know what they're thinking, or they don't know what they're talking about. Well, okay, but what obstacles might get in the way? Okay, how did you try that? Tell me about what you did. If you're talking about something similar or the same, well, tell me how you did it. And then they tell you, and it sounds like they did a half-baked job of doing it, or maybe they didn't have enough permission from above, to do it. There's any one of a number of obstacles to something being successful, and they might have tried it, and those obstacles loomed up, and their initiative, their activity dropped by the wayside because an obstacle popped up in their way. So you need to expect that there will be obstacles there, particularly pushback from the agency or from people who've already worked on this. Because if you guys come up with some ideas, and they might be creative and millennially focused, driven by the age group, the experience group that you find yourselves in, they might have never ever thought of what you're going to think about. So you need to identify, before you even talk to these people, what the potential obstacles might be, and have a battle plan for addressing those obstacles. Now, I'm not going to go into developing battle plans right now, but this is something that we're going to talk about. Well, hopefully what we'll do on the 7th, when I get back, is I'm hoping that we'll take one of your central question worksheets, and we'll go through this, and we'll get to the obstacles, and we'll say, okay, so now, Sydney, what are your ideas? What could you coach us on in terms of addressing obstacles? So that's a promise, but you guys have to do this. You have to have this done in 2 weeks. All right. So here is an example of one that is filled out, and it's one that I'm using from my work with the monks. Okay. Let me see if I can get this better. I'm going to send you these files. So, God, what is wrong with me? Okay, there we go. I have spatial dyslexia, as I said. Okay, so maybe I'll just go like this. I bet you're sitting there laughing at me. Guys, I would laugh at me too. Okay, so what is the basic question we're trying to resolve? So we asked these guys. I mean, we've been there, totally different culture. These guys crawled over the mountains of Himalayas, to get away from the Chinese in order to live, by the way. And you're in they're refugees, a civilization in a diasporic situation. The only opportunity for young men in the Tibetan community that had to leave is to become a monk. That's the only opportunity. Everything else is just survive, figure out some way to survive, okay? So, but the interesting thing is that they're very, very interested in lots of things about the West, and they're very interested in interacting with the West, particularly with us. Geez, sorry, I'm just like totally messing this up. So we asked them, and we spent a couple of days talking to them, listening to them. 2 young monks, not the leaders, because we had all the leaders in our class. They were the heads of different departments in the university, and they were the university regent, and not the regent, but the university president, and blah blah blah. And then we had a couple of monks who were serving tea. This is a big thing in Asia when you train or do anything for them, as they have this big whole tea ceremony. And so we started chatting with the monks, because they're young and cool, and we like to talk with anybody. And so we asked them, what should we be doing in here? I mean, what's your idea about what the central question is? And they said, this is a no-brainer, you guys. They said, we want to be able to speak English. And, that you're speaking English, I can speak a little English, they said. And the only way we get it is we have to be here for 12 years. And then we get into this snarky English class that meets 4 times a week. And the guy who's teaching it is kind of drinks a lot. And so he's not really very good. And we just think that, we really want to learn how to speak English. Okay, so that's their problem. So this is what we came up with. And we did this with everybody in the room. We didn't just do it with the 2 monks. We did this with all of the leaders, all of the major stakeholders. Okay, so then we said, okay, well, now the next thing we need to figure out is, why is this important? I'm afraid this is going to show up backwards. That's going to be disgusting. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you then. All right, so why this is important is what we came up with is our monks. I can do it this way. Our monks must be able to teach and interact with people throughout the world, both to promote Buddhist study and practice, and to ensure the future of the monastery. So one of the things that's happening in the diasporic community in India is that the monks get cell phones. The monks have access to all sorts of things that they didn't have access to before, and so they're becoming more and more interested in Western things. But they still have a commitment to teaching and promoting Buddhism throughout the world, although they probably aren't going to be the ones that go out into the world. So that part, and then also if more and more young men find other things to do besides joining a monastery for their future, then the monastery is going to fall apart. Okay, so that's why it's important. It's important for the future of Buddhism, and it's important for the future of the monastery. What we don't have in here is that it's important for the men, for the young men. Because if this was their only opportunity, if they learn to speak English or Chinese or Indian or even Farsi, then their options open up and they can actually move out into the world and have other ways of supporting themselves, because in the monastery everything's taken care of. All right. So the third question is, who will be affected by the solution and who will be involved? So the head abbot of the monastery is involved. All of the teachers, we call them Khenpos, all of the Khenpos will be involved. They will be affected, I'm sorry. The monks will be involved themselves, for sure. The monastery administrator, the administrator of the English program, potential financial sponsors, and maybe you can kind of stretch it and say maybe the world, because if over the period of 20, my idea is this whole thing is like a 25 to 50 year process. But if the Tibetans are able to communicate to Westerners in their own language instead of having to go through a translator, then Buddhism can spread more quickly. So I think potential future students are also affected. Okay, so what's the criteria for success? So we landed with monks can speak and write English well enough to teach courses in English. Now we can get super specific with this one. So we can say within a 6-month period of time, 7 monks will register for, we design, I think we're going to design a new program, okay? So within 6 months, 7 monks will be able to communicate in English verbally well enough that they can have a conversation with a Westerner. Simple conversation with a Westerner. Okay, that'd be number 1. Long term would be within 3 to 5 years, at least 2 monks who've gone through the program will be able to speak and write English well enough so they can teach courses in English. Okay? So that's a criteria for success. Okay, so what is possible and not possible to do given the situation? Oh, this was a big pile of you know what. All right. So the structure of the curriculum and the structure of the instruction process has been in place for centuries. I'm going to take some tea just a minute. It has been in place for centuries. And the Tibetans are very ritualistic, and so they're very bound to what's been done in the past is what we do now. Try to change the organization that has that basic operating mindset. All right. So what we discovered, it's possible to restructure the curriculum of the monastery, but it's not possible to send people to other countries to learn English. So it's possible to restructure the curriculum, but bango, that possibility is so tiny. All right. So then we come to the obstacles, which is the big obstacle here. Okay, what obstacles might get in the way? Okay, time. Takes time, takes a lot of time. People might lose interest because it takes too much time. Traditional thinking that does not allow for such education in the monasteries. That's the big one. Okay, so in the monastery, and this one is still, let's see, when we did this first one in 2012, I guess. And 2012. And big push at the beginning, lots of enthusiasm, lots of, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. I mean, there isn't a program in place, but they've since changed Abbott, so you have to think about let's see. What would be affected? What's the criteria? Blah, blah, blah. It's an obstacle as staffing, because staff changes. So we didn't put that in here. So the Abbott changed. And the Abbott and he just changed a year ago. So he's not sure he likes this English and Chinese. We did English and Chinese. He's not sure he likes this. So the thing has kind of slowed down. But this is a pretty comprehensive central question worksheet. I would add something to this now, which is, well, I guess it's here. It's who will be affected. So if you would, when you get this, think about those as stakeholders, because we want to start thinking about people who are involved in this, that they're stakeholders. Okay, so do that. All right, so now we've got this. Now what do we do with it? You have one of your own. You're going to have that. I'll send you the file for this so you can print one out, because by November 7th, when you come back to class and I'm there, we're going to do these. So I'm going to see everybody's. All right, so the next thing that you need to do is structure, based on your central question worksheet, structure an issue tree. So the first thing, you can't see that, and I keep thinking you can see it. Okay, so the first thing on here is the central question, and then there's issue 1, 2, 3, and you can have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, many. Let me see if I pull back a bit. Is that going to help? My room isn't very good. Okay, so central question, issue 1, 2, and 3. And the first thing you start with is the central question, and you're going to expand it into its components. Now, it's eventually going to look like this. But you go left to right, and then multiple levels if needed. But let me tell you a secret about how to do this, okay? So that's the end product, but getting to the end product involves more than just saying, okay, so I think this issue and this issue and this issue. Okay, so to get a more complete and more rigorous issue tree, take your central question, do a whiteboard brainstorming, and just look at your central question. Let's go back to our central question. How can we improve the monk's ability to speak English? Okay, so what's the first thing that comes to mind? Hire English teachers. Okay, then the second question is, where are we going to get them from? Then the third question is, how many do we need? And the fourth question, the fourth thing is, okay, English teachers, hiring methods, recruiting, selection of students, where does it fit in the curriculum? Just as many of those kind of money. How are we going to pay for it? When do we start? Who heads it? Just make make everything that you can think about. Think and think and think and think. At what age would we start? What age? Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so then you have a whole bunch of things on a whiteboard or on a piece of paper that you've been, and then you look at all of your things and you see the things that have a commonality. So, for example, anything that has to do with selection of students. Okay, what age would we start? How many? Let's see. What age would they start? What level are they in the school? Do they have any ability this far? Do they want to do it? Okay, so you cluster those together, and what's the commonality? What could you label that as? You could, so one of your first issues going out could be student consideration, issues with students, or student selection. Okay, so you've got one level, and then the second level would be okay. So what are some of the other things that I said? When are we going to do it? When are we going to introduce it to them? What level do they have to be in the curriculum? How do we select? I just said, how do we select? So the things that are in common with that one is timing issues. When is it in the curriculum? How do we select? I think student selection is the third one. So when does it come in the curriculum? How in the hell are we going to revise the curriculum? How do we go about doing that? So I guess the second one I would make, given just the things I've thrown out of my mouth, maybe academic and curriculum considerations, because that's a big deal. And then the third one might be, how are we going to pay for this? So financial situation. Okay, so there we've got like 3 branches or 4 branches. And then, okay, so you can go, so you've got your central question, you have the next level to the right, which are the main issues that come off the central question. And then you're going to have issues that come off that second level. If you're really, really good at this, and I would advise you to do it with this exercise, is to go to 3 levels if you can. Okay, so it would be relatively easy. Okay, so curriculums decisions, curriculum impact. So when can it fit into the curriculum? What adjustments have to be made to the curriculum so that students get this? What fourth or fifth issue on the first level is how do we find qualified teachers to teach English? So branches off with that would be recruitment, training, I guess training and assimilation, something like that. And so this gives you, let me get to it. Okay, so this this one is about how to save money, and it's going to make much more sense if you can see it. But I'm going to tell it to you here. Okay. So for this one, this issue tree is how can I have more money at the end of the month without incurring a debt? Okay, so and the top of this, one way to approach this is to ask how. So how can I have more money? So how? Can I increase income? Can I reduce expenses? Okay? That's really, really clear. I don't know anything else that would fit there. Have more money and reduce what I spend. All right. So then we say, can I increase income? Well, how can I increase income? Well, is it possible that I reach a windfall, that I win the lottery, that somebody dies and leaves me a whole bunch of money, that somebody looks at me, likes me, and gives me a whole bunch of money? That's one way. Second way, can I earn more from investments? Okay, that one is appropriate. How can I increase income? The third one is, can I receive more money from work? So, can I get another job? Can I get a raise at my job? Well, that's the next level. Okay, so can I receive more money from work? This level. All right, so can I reduce expenses? How can I reduce expenses? Can I pay less for the same amount of items? And can I buy fewer items? So let's go back up to increasing income. How can I increase my income? I can do it legally, and I can do it illegally. We're not going to talk about doing it illegally, are we? Because we're ethical. So legally, we can inherit or we can win the lottery. We're not, like I said, we're not going to do illegally. Can I receive more money from work? How? I can work more hours, or I can make more per hour. How can I pay less? Can I pay less for the same amounts? How? I can buy lower quality items, or I can shop around for specials. And can I buy fewer items? Sure. What fewer items could I buy? Food, clothing, utensils, travel, entertainment, other. Okay, so I could have more money at the end of the month by doing that. And then back up over here, you can go 4 levels on some of them, which is how to legally, I can inherit money, I can win the lottery, how can I work more hours, by overtime or by an additional job, how can I make more per hour, higher job level, or better paid industry. Okay, so see, this one is easy. You're going to get this, and this I'll have it in your hand so that you'll have it with you. Should I not be able to, oops, I'm going to turn all this around. Should I not be able to make the webinar work, then you can listen to this. Listen to this. This is really, really spotty. And then you'll have these slides to look at. Now, I'm going to put the slides on as a file so you can access that. And but you need to come to class and listen to whatever's going to happen. If I'm speaking to you live, then we can actually talk through this, and you won't hear this. If I'm if you're listening to this, I couldn't make it work. So we're going to have to do it the hard way. Okay? All right. There are some criteria for a good issue tree. There's nothing missing. So every possibility has been considered. There's no duplication, so you don't have two lines that have to do with student retention. I mean, this one must go without saying, but it should cover real and important issues. It needs to be actionable, practical, and helpful. So it must lead to a sense of, okay, now I understand the issue. Now I see the issues involved with the main issue, the central question, and there are this structured approach naturally leads to action. That these are the things that I can do. All right. Criteria for a good issue tree is also that it's a working document that can change. These things change all the time. When you've got teams working on these with big, huge, humongous problems, you know, this is why they use whiteboards a lot, because you can just and change it. And okay, and so it can be used as a tool to build alignment. So when you've done one, I mean, especially if you're on a team and there's an issue that you're addressing, and there's many different perspectives. If you do this and you show it to people, it's one of those processes that leads to more information, more evidence of thought. You know, it makes for more likely that others will do the same thing, and that you can form some alignment around the commonalities. And finally, and then I'm going to stop this because I think this is enough for you to struggle with. Finally, the last branch, the one to the far right, becomes your work plan. So on the one we looked at in terms of having more money, the work plan is inherit or win the lottery. Well, you know, how likely can we do that? But work overtime, get an additional job, a higher job level, or better paid industry. Okay, that's one way to get more money. And reducing expenses, we can shop around for specials. We can buy lower quality items and buy fewer items. Okay, all right. So I have no idea how this is going to look or how it's going to work out. I'm hoping that I'm not going to need to use it, but I'm going to take it and I'll give it to Catherine today. And then we'll also try to see if we can work out the connection in the classroom, because I would really, really like to be able to talk to you guys next week. All right. Bye.